Chapter 1. Everything was heavy. My limbs lay still and unbending on the damp cotton sheets. The pounding in my head drowned out any noise the world tried to whisper into my ear. I flung my right arm to the side, only to find Sarah's ghostly figure lying there. The empty chill of her spectral presence wrapped around me, weighing down on my chest with a cold so sharp it bit. I bit back a scream, fighting down a wave of panic as it splashed against my heart. No. But what could I do? With every blink, her ghostly eyes rested on me, her beautiful, haunting gaze a cruel reminder of the life I'd lost. Sarah. My Sarah. My love. My pain. I wanted to shake her away, to force her back into the abyss from whence she came, yet every attempted swipe of my arm seemed to push her closer. "God damn it, Sarah," I groaned, my voice echoing from the walls of my dimly lit, claustrophobic sanctuary. The remnants of last night's cheap cologne hung stale in the air, unwilling to yield to sunlight seeping through the cracks in the window blinds. Blinking the sleep away, I took another futile swing, hoping this phantasmal intrusion would break, allowing me to sink back into the depths of my uneasy slumber. "Go away. You, of all people, should understand that I need my space right now," I hissed, swallowing the urge to sob. My heart raced, dragging sweat to the surface, slickening my palms. I stared into the void of emptiness between us, wanting nothing more than to escape the confines of this room, to find solace far away from the spectral echoes of our past. "Thomas," Sarah whispered, her voice as light and sad as the breeze whispering through the dead leaves outside. Her form took shape, pale and shimmering before my sight. The shadows across the room darkened, slithering towards her as if drawn by a magnet. The crevices I hadn't cleaned in weeks crept forward, a cruel jigsaw illuminating the hollow cracks of my pitiful soul. I couldn't bear to look at her, that ghostly figure conjured from the depths of my longing and anger. The smell of her perfume no longer soothed me as it once had. It now mingled with the staleness of the room and wrenched my stomach. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice barely echoing around the room. Sarah's ghost hovered for a moment, her spectral eyes overflowing with an unreadable melancholy. A heavy stillness filled the air as I tried to decipher her gaze and force my heart to stop shuddering against my chest. "I want you to remember me, Thomas," she eventually answered, her voice laced with ethereal sorrow. The shadows around the room seemed to bow their heads as if acknowledging her presence and paying tribute to the woman they had swallowed alongside my love. I sat up, rubbing my bleary eyes with the heel of my hands, trying to dispel the lingering ghosts of dreams as I braced myself for the waking world. Sarah's shade had not ventured any closer. Instead, she remained in place, her phantasmal body trembling in the chill of unresolved sorrow. "You know I remember you," I finally replied, my voice husky with grief. "You're here with me, even when I try to forget." "So what kind of remembering is it that you want, Sarah?" I asked her, my voice cracking. Her apparition shrugged, sending shivering ripples through her translucent form. "I don't know. Maybe you could start by talking to me, like we used to." The ghost of Sarah's smile pierced through the shadows that clung to us both. I swallowed hard around the lump climbing up my throat. "I've been talking to you, haven't I? I yell at you, beg you, and tell you to leave me alone." Chapter 2. The smoky, cloying air filled my lungs like a lover's embrace, pushing every lamentable memory to the forefront of my consciousness. I leaned into the gnarled wooden frame of my unwieldy, creaky bed and let out a deep, tremulous sigh, mourning for Sarah, my departed love. The hum of the city outside filtered in through the cracked window blinds, jarring against the oppressive silence of the room that had become a prison for me, trapping me within its claustrophobic embrace. "Fuck," I muttered, closing my eyes and allowing the weight of the world to press down upon me. The stench of cheap cologne and stale cigarette smoke hung heavy in the air, stinging my nostrils and sinking into the dark folds of my psyche. The spectral remnants of Sarah's presence danced and flickered in the shadows, mocking my existence. Her spectral eyes bore through me as I swung my legs out of the bed and forced myself to stand, fueled by a bitter determination to reclaim some semblance of control. In that moment, I wanted nothing more than to break free from the haunting grip Sarah's ghost had on me. Her pleas for mere remembrance gnawed at my conscience with an unnerving persistence, awakening a desperate desire for an answer. As I peeled myself from the cold, unwelcome company of my bed, tears blossoming at the corners of my eyes, I felt a sudden flash of clarity. "Then let me remember you," I whispered, as if beseeching a priest to offer solace from a lifetime of burdens. The dark corners of the room seemed to recoil at my words before settling back into quiet despair. A reassembled outfit lay in a crumpled heap on the floor, worthy of Mount Everest, challenging me to tackle its intimidating impression. My shaky legs carried me over scrunched jeans, socks, and the remnants of my futile attempts to forget. Each object worn carried a memory, entangled in the vines of pain. Beneath the debris, jagged fragments of the life I once lived taunted me as they caught in the fading light of the room. My trembling hands snatched the phone from the bedside table, dredging up memories with each unsteady brush against the edges. I dialed Dr. Simmons's number, pressing it to my ear with a shaky breath. "Dr. Simmons' office," a woman answered, her voice dulcet yet professional. "Is Dr. Simmons available?" I asked, hoping to find solace in the reassuring trained psychologist's refined British accent. "Moment, please," she replied, a gentle tone echoing in her voice as if to cushion the blow of whatever revelation awaited me. My grip on the phone tightened, impatience gnawing at my insides. The shadows of the room seemed to expand and contract with the beats of my racing heart, mimicking the ebb and flow of my anxiety. The click-clack of a keyboard infiltrated the silence. I pictured Dr. Simmons' assistant in a small office, her fingers dancing across the keyboard, unaware of the storm brewing in mine as she searched for availability. "Dr. Simmons is available now," she chirped. "May I put you through?" "Yes, please do," I murmured, my voice monotonous as my eyes drifted around the room. The smell of stale cigarette smoke lingered in the air like a vengeful ghost, seemingly warning me away from the path I was treading upon. At first I heard a buzz that slowly morphed into Dr. Simmons' voice. That soothing accent I craved filtered through the phone. "Hello, Thomas. How can I assist you today? I have a feeling this visit will be unlike any we've had before, given the circumstances." "It's Sarah," I managed, my voice gruff and strained. "She hasn't left me alone since the accident. I can't make her leave." My eyes brimmed with tears, threatening to spill over and blind me. "Ah, Thomas," he sighed, his voice heavy with concern. "The departed have a way of lingering when grieving hearts leave behind the light of love. You are strong, Thomas, and you must find the will to proceed. Not for me, but for your own well-being. I won't leave your side until you're ready to move on," Sarah replied, her spectral voice echoing in my ears. I braced the phone between my shoulder and ear, swiping at the tears spilling down my cheeks. "Sarah, my heart has been shattered, and I fear she is using the shard to trap me inside a dark dream of despair," I whispered, the words catching and tumbling from my numb lips. The line buzzed quietly as the doctor took a moment to absorb my anguish. The once reassuring voice turned into a somber and weighty force in my ear. "Please be quiet. My plans may fall over if there is a flub. Monique's offering as much help as me. Loathsome, I believe. But I would sooner die than be useful to anyone." Dr. Simmons paused for a moment, as if deliberating on the depth of my despair. "Listen to me carefully, Thomas. Now, I sense that you're being held prisoner by something far more sinister than mere nostalgia. I believe Sarah's ghost is the result of a powerful curse imposed upon her by an entity, a malevolent force seeking to keep you under its control, preventing you from moving on with your life." The room grew cold, ice skittering over my heart. Goosebumps dashed across my skin, and I shivered uncontrollably, paralyzed by Dr. Simmons' revelation. "Cursed." The word rasped through my throat, barely escaping my lips. Chapter 3. The rusted, colossal monstrosity that towered before us had, for eons, been a steadfast sentinel in this abandoned monument to industry. The corroded, hollow bones of the warehouse quivered in the sunken darkness, like a haunting, deep-toned hum reverberating through my frenzied synapses. I tread nearer, the weeds and decaying detritus crunching beneath my faltering footsteps. A shiver of anticipation and anxiety coursed through me as the decrepit, desolate behemoth grew and swallowed its run-down atmosphere. "Dr. Simmons, I'm not so sure we should go in there," I murmured, the words like an indistinct breath of wind hovering between us. A stray beam of sunlight shirked the shadows around us, a luminous fugitive, illuminating fragments of forsaken treasures residing within the warehouse. "We have no choice," Dr. Simmons declared, his tone firm as he strode with purpose through the twisted metal gates. The once sturdy locks lay shattered and violated, the skeletal fingers of rusty nails reaching out in a ghostly plea. An icy grip of fear clenched my heart as I reluctantly followed Dr. Simmons, but the weight of my haunting had left me no other sanctuary. My footsteps echoed through the gaping maw of the warehouse, the cacophony inviting the entity hidden within to unleash its haunting as we ventured deep within. Graffiti marked the walls, messages scratched into history from passers-by, reflecting on fragments of their lives. The shattered remains of forgotten industrial-age machinery were scattered haphazardly throughout the space, slowly being swallowed by time. Our footsteps grew quieter, as though the very ground was attempting to muffle our trespassing. A shiver ran down my spine as we passed the exposed and rusted pipes, their insides crawling with the slime of neglect. I glanced around, my eyes straining as I tried to penetrate the gloom, but found only darkness. "Do you feel it?" Dr. Simmons murmured. His eyes showed a harrowing intensity, as if peering into the unknown had left its mark. I shivered, wrapping my arms around myself. "Yes," I whispered, afraid of rousing the ghosts that inhabited this hollow, cavernous mausoleum. A stray gust of wind weaved through rows of broken machinery, moaning as it blew past. I could feel the walls watching us, the leering eyes in every chipped fragment of paint and layer of dust. "Good," he affirmed. We delved deeper, following the labyrinthine expanse that was the entity's dwelling. The twisted metal and debris told a tale of ancient machinery and forgotten ambitions, weaving an intricate story that was neither forgotten nor forgiven. Shadows danced upon the walls, and if I allowed my own mind to sway under their whispers, I could have sworn they took the shape of haunting figures lurking in the forgotten corners of this hollow building. Dr. Simmons turned to me, his gaze a beacon in the dark. "I can feel its presence, Thomas. Prepare yourself." Something inside me quaked, like a fragile eggshell close to cracking. The burden of unease pressed against me as I tightened my grip on the phone, waiting for Dr. Simmons to elaborate. My footsteps echoed in the emptiness that threatened to swallow me. "The entity is close, and we must tread lightly. The abandoned warehouse, though desolate and forsaken in appearance, contains a darkness that words cannot truly encapsulate. It is here where we shall face the torment of your past, and hopefully a pathway towards your future." Dr. Simmons' voice sliced through the air as he spoke with grim deliberation. With each word, my heart lodged itself deeper in my throat, yet the darkness of the warehouse was now a comforting embrace compared to the icy grip that lingered around my heart. I followed him, our footsteps synchronized against the muffled clatter of machinery lying restless in the shadows. The musty stench permeated the air, twisting like malignant vines in my nostrils and sending another shiver down my spine. I hoofed ever deeper, glancing around at the debris littering the floor. Broken machinery, good-for-nothing pieces of metal, and rubble sat like macabre sculptures in the darkness. Lights flickered, casting dancing shadows upon the walls. They danced and pulsed to an unseen rhythm, the rhythm of the entity. I clenched my jaw and forged ahead, fighting the darkness that seemed to press in from every side. "We're getting warmer," Dr. Simmons grumbled from somewhere behind me. He was a shadow among shadows. I could barely make out the soft, pulsing yellow around him from what little illumination escaped our faltering flashlights. We thread further into this rusted monument of abandonment, retracing the entity's steps. Something slithered along the walls, tickling my ears with a hissing whisper. "Doctor, did you hear that?" For a long moment, nothing but the distant moan of the wind answered me. Finally, his voice punctured the silence. "I did, Thomas. It seems we are not alone," he replied, his voice barely louder than a sigh. His silhouette pivoted, the flickering glow of yellow from his flashlight shifting toward the sinister shadows that shrouded our surroundings. The whispers swirled around me, tightening into a noose of anxiety. Whatever lurked in the darkness was drawing near, coaxed into existence by our presence. Fear curled my hands into fists, digging my fingernails into the soft flesh of my palms, until I felt the warm trickle of blood. Every flicker of shadow seemed to take on a life of its own, a menacing profile that clutched at my heart, straining in my chest. "We need to keep moving," I called out, my voice steady despite the discordant symphony coursing through my veins. The entity yearned to consume us, a vile creature grown over time on the despair and misery it fed off. Dr. Simmons nodded, leading me through the darkness with the grace of a seasoned hunter. Chapter 4. The door groaned shut behind me as I staggered into the gloomy apartment, a crushing weight of guilt and despair pressing down on my shoulders. Once comforting, the familiar space now felt like a prison cell, closing in around me with its oppressive silence and stagnant air. A ragged breath escaped my lips, echoing through the decaying stillness. I took in the desolate scene before me, a graveyard of unopened letters and cold takeout boxes piled high on the dust-choked coffee table. The stench of rotting food mingled with the acrid smell of old cigarettes, a pungent reminder of my self-imposed exile from the world outside. As I took a heavy step forward, a spectral presence materialized beside me. Sarah, or what remained of her, hovered close. Her ghostly form shimmered like moonlight, her once vibrant blue eyes now glowing softly with an otherworldly light. "I can't keep doing this," I whispered, my voice hoarse with pain. "I can't carry this guilt any longer. I can't save you." She drifted closer, her expression filled with a sympathy that only served to twist the knife. "I know," she murmured, reaching a transparent hand toward me. The air around her rippled with an eerie chill as her spectral fingers brushed against my cheek. "But you cannot save everyone, Thomas. Sometimes there are forces at work beyond our control." My vision blurred again, this time with hot, helpless anger and tears. I was too stubborn to shed in front of this ethereal version of Sarah. "What's the point, then?" I snarled. "What's the point of living if we can't protect the ones we love? Why did she have to leave me? Why couldn't I be strong enough to save her?" I slammed my fist against the beat-up couch, sending a cloud of dust puffing into the air. The spectral figure of Sarah watched silently, appearing in human form, but still as ghostly and elusive as ever. "They took her away from me," I growled, my voice heavy with unspoken guilt. Sarah's spectral eyes adjusted to the dim light of the room, gazing at me with an empathy that only added to my despair. I looked away, feeling the weight of my failure in the very marrow of my bones. The scent of cheap cologne thickened the room, trapping me within an invisible net of regret and remorse. I took a deep breath, searching for solace in a world that had abandoned me. The dust-filled air whispered past my trembling lips, granting me no respite from my own dark thoughts. "Thomas," Sarah said, her voice barely more than a whisper. She extended her hand towards me, but her translucent fingers passed harmlessly through my arm. "Sarah, I don't understand. Why are you here? If you were able to visit me, why didn't you stop me from taking the wheel? Why didn't you save us both?" My voice dropped to a frail whisper, the question like a blade twisting in my heart. Her ghostly face softened, and a tear emerged from her ethereal eye. "Thomas, I wish I could have saved us, but it wasn't my place." Besides, I had a more pressing issue at hand. The dark energy thrumming in the bowels of the warehouse, like a trapped animal prowling its cage. My heart drummed in my chest as I listened to the whispers. Sarah's shade faded into the shadows as I stepped towards the sinister human. "Hello?" I called out, the word cracking in the stillness. The building seemed to breathe around me, the sable corners creeping closer, as if to swallow me whole. "Anyone there?" I hesitated, kicking up dust as I stepped cautiously into the darkness. The warehouse had become a suffocating labyrinth of twisting metal, and shadows cast eerie silhouettes on the crumbling concrete walls. It felt as if the very essence of this forgotten place was trying to ensnare me in its tangled web. In a distant corner, the spectral figure of Sarah, embedded in a shadowed alcove. "Sarah, what's behind that door?" I asked, my curiosity piqued despite the ominous feeling in the air. Her spectral features trembled slightly, as if working up the courage to speak. "Thomas, I can't tell you what lies beyond that door, but I can assure you that it will change everything." My heart raced with a wicked mixture of fear and exhilaration. Change everything? How? Change me? "Perhaps," Sarah admitted. "But Thomas, you must be prepared for what lies ahead. We cannot say what that door holds, but the forces at work are not to be underestimated," Sarah cautioned as I glanced up at her, my eyes filled with intrigue. The ghostly figure before me radiated an eerie, ethereal energy, her otherworldly form reminding me of the stark contrast between the familiar and the unknown. I studied the rusted door ahead for a long moment, its pitted surface covered in grime and cobwebs. The faint hum from within that mysterious room pulsed like an erratic heartbeat throbbing with dark energy. Chapter 5. I found myself back in the dimly lit confines of the church, seeking solace in its ancient stone embrace. The scent of aged wood and beeswax candles hung heavy in the air, mingling with the faint aroma of damp earth from the freshly turned soil outside. Metronome marking the passage of the hours, reflecting the oasis of the gingerbread in a wave from the shining courts. Silence befollowed the shining water. From the whispers of clothing from the passageway moved a fraction of a foot behind Coro. I heard myself breathe deeply when I reached the outside of the walls and began to walk upstairs in search. I sank onto the hard wooden pew, my body aching from exhaustion and tension. My mind raced, a whirlwind of fragmented thoughts and memories, each one a shard of glass, cutting through the fog of grief that clouded my thoughts. I closed my eyes, trying to focus on the rhythmic sound of my own breathing, attempting to center myself amidst the chaos. That's when I heard it. A soft, almost imperceptible whisper, carried on the cool draft that stirred the dust motes dancing in the slanted rays of sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows. I opened my eyes, my heart pounding in my chest, and saw Sarah stood at the end of the aisle, her form translucent yet somehow more solid than I had ever seen her before. Her eyes were bright blue, filled with a mix of sadness and longing. "Thomas, I need to tell you something," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I stood up and started walking towards her, each footstep echoing through the cavernous space. "What is it, Sarah?" I asked, my own voice shaking. As I reached out to touch her shoulder, my hand passed right through her. She let out a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of centuries. "I'm not really here, Thomas," she said. "I'm just a figment of your guilt, doing everything in my power to stay by your side. But you need to let me go." Her form flickered, like an image on an old television losing its signal. I took a step back, my heart aching. The weight of Sarah's words sat heavily on my shoulders. "How can I let you go?" I whispered. "You're the only thing I have left." "You have so much more than me, Thomas," Sarah replied, her voice gentler than it had been in months. The outline of her body began to fade, the church walls swallowing her up until she was just an echo of a memory, a wisp of blue smoke dissipating in the breeze. "I don't know how to move forward without you," I murmured into the void where she had once been, my heart tearing open like a piece of paper, shredding into tiny fragments. I forced myself to my feet, leaving the cold, familiar comforts of the church behind and stepping out into the anemic sunlight of a winter afternoon. My body moved with a phantom languor that told of sleepless nights and haunted days, but I knew that I could no longer linger in despair. I had to carry on. The dampness of the earth pervaded my senses as I stood there, a poignant reminder of the cycle of life and death that seemed almost vulgar in its relentlessness. I glanced back at the solemn stone structure that had become my refuge from the outside world, trying to embed the image deep into my memory. With a heavy sigh, I turned to face the front door, steeled myself for the day ahead, and stepped out onto the cold, hard pavement. The sun cast its feeble bays onto the frigid streets, washing them in a pale, ghostly light that seemed to mirror my own state of mind. I walked with a slow, aimless gait, curious about how the world would still manage to turn, despite the loss that threatened to consume me. If you like this story, and for more dark stories, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. See ya!